This podcast is a production of Unfiltered Studios. If you would like to know more about joining Unfiltered Studios, please visit our website at unfpod.com for more information.
And now, here's a word from our sponsor.
Spartacus Coffee is made for and made by hustlers, entrepreneurs, peak athletes, self-starters, and free thinkers. Our community of coffee drinkers believe in lifting each other up to be the best version of ourselves we can be. On top of that, every sale goes to the nonprofit organization No Kid Hungry, a national effort to end childhood hunger in America. To learn more about that and order some of the best, richest coffee you can find at an affordable price, go to SpartacusCoffee.com and be sure to use my promo code. It's pretty simple. It's JBurke, which is JAYBURKE, and get 10% off your first order. Remember, Spartacus Coffee. We fuel the grind, we fuel the success, we fuel champions. We are Spartacus.
And now back to your regularly scheduled program.
Is it better to be lucky than good? I think that's the question at the heart of today's episode, where we dive into the roller coaster ride of recent political events that have shaped the landscape of the 2024 election. Now, it has been a crazy month, and maybe July isn't ending as spectacularly for Donald Trump as it began, but he may have had a nearly 30-day run unlike any we've seen in politics. It all began with the debate against Joe Biden that was hastily moved to the end of June, where Joe Biden's struggles, to put it lightly, became painfully evident. This set off a chain reaction within the Democratic Party, throwing them into chaos as they grappled with internal divisions and concerns about the future. While Democrats were distracted and divided, Donald Trump capitalized on a series of favorable court decisions granting him near total immunity from federal charges and dismissing strong legal cases against him. And even when Biden had a strong showing at a post-NATO press conference, he also had a few gaffes, like calling the Ukrainian President Zelensky President Putin, or referring to Kamala Harris as Vice President Trump. This helped the media focus even further on Biden's gaffes and age, further painting a narrative of weakness. The period was also marked by a stark contrast between the two parties. The period was marked by Trump's incredible luck, especially with the assassination attempt and the debate, which highlighted a strong versus weak narrative. As one senior Democrat summed it up, the Republicans have a guy who bullets bounce off of. We have a guy who can't handle a flight of stairs. For all his faults and controversies, Trump might be the luckiest candidate in modern politics. Now, full disclosure, this was recorded in the night the news broke that President Joe Biden contracted COVID again. And he has since dropped out, meaning Kamala Harris looks to be the Democratic nominee under strange circumstances, but certainly she has stolen some of that momentum, raising over $200 million in a week. Now, Trump really hasn't had an answer for her yet, and he also might be having some buyer's remorse over his VP pick. But the one thing we should know, Trump has been down before. In the past, he's been so seemingly close to the dust heap of history, and yet, even with Harris's charge, I don't see how it would shock anyone if he wins in November, because for all his faults, his issues, convictions, bankruptcies, allegations, and boasts, he's still here. Or I'll leave it to Bill Maher, not usually my favorite comedian, but he probably put it best on his show when he said,
"But Trump didn't survive the attempt on his life because of divine intervention. Trump is alive because he's the single luckiest motherfucker who ever lived. His whole life... His whole life is a string of you gotta be fucking kidding me."
To discuss this incredible streak and whether it might end, I enlisted my friend Brandon from one of my favorite podcasts, FDR's Wheelchair. And we talk long about this streak and explore how these dramatic developments and their implications will affect the 2024 election. Now, I did say already that we recorded this in the past, so some of it might seem out of date, but there's still a lot of relevance, history, and just good old political conversation about how these parties have changed and what might happen moving forward. But find out for yourself, and I hope you enjoy the Brandon Ziegler with Jay Burke Show. It won't always be a straight line.
It won't always be a straight line.
It won't always be a straight line.
But take the journey.
Take the journey.
Take the journey.
And escape a while for thoughtful excursions
Into the world of ideas across media,
politics, technology,
Pop culture.
and all realms of civic life. Take the journey.
Take the journey.
Take the journey.
Take the journey. Take the journey.
Take the journey.
You're listening to The With Jay Burke Show. Hello and welcome to The With Jay Burke Show. My name is Jason Burke, and though I'm technically the host of this podcast, it's the guests who truly take top billing. This is a place for curious minds who enjoy civil and sometimes meandering conversation. If you appreciate a few laughs and want to come away with new knowledge about subjects that aren't always easy to break down, then you're the person I want listening to this podcast. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with my friend Brandon from FDR's Wheelchair. FDR's Wheelchair, a political podcast and part of the Unfiltered Studios podcast network, is hosted by, obviously, Brandon and Dave Martin, and offers insightful commentary on current events with a touch of humor, because how else would you even be able to take what's going on? Brandon, thank you so much for joining me today.
Hey, no problem, Jay. Thanks for having me, man.
So, this one's kind of thrown together, and I guess what we're going to dive into is what could be the luckiest streak of any presidential candidate, maybe ever. We're talking about Donald Trump's streak in the last 27, 28 days, whatever it's been. Just to let everybody know, we're recording this July 17th. I'll try to turn it around as quick as possible. But this has been a month, maybe 3 weeks, whatever it is, I've never seen in my life.
It is unprecedented. It's unheard of. I tried to look back at other presidential campaigns to see who else sold their soul to the devil to get this kind of run. I haven't even seen this kind of luck in casinos, man. Like I am literally speechless to describe the momentum this guy is getting from all the huge wins he keeps putting together.
Yeah, so I guess where we could start off is we'll start off on June 27th, because that's the night of the debate. I say night, I stress night because Biden's, supposedly better in the day. So
supposedly, yeah, we'll see. So he trips and falls down Air Force One or something.
Yeah, exactly. So the event was obviously the first debate. This was going to be watched by everybody. And during it, President Joe Biden's performance was widely regarded as being disastrous. Partly his appearance and just other things.
It was so detrimental to him that all Trump had to do was speak words. That's all he had to do. And he had to just be upbeat about it. And everyone was like, oh, yeah, he won.
Yeah. Well, he did a good job of not being himself. He kind of was like so composed during that debate. But I don't know if it's just because Biden was just so disastrous that he was like, I don't even have to bring my A game.
I think that's what it was, because I do remember watching half, because I couldn't get through all of it. So I remember watching half of it, and like the second or third response Biden gave, I saw Trump just kind of look over and then look back at the camera like, I've got this. It was like, I'll just stick to the red meat for the base and it'll be fine.
Right. I mean, because, listen, I think they counted 28 lies or more. It didn't matter, because despite all that lying during the debate, which, listen, everybody lies. He's just exceptional at it. He was
the way to describe it, yeah.
Yeah, he was just more energetic, didn't look old, and it just shifted all the focus onto Biden's shortcomings. I'm like, I remember I was watching it, and I'm like, does this guy know there's a split screen? He had that gaping look every time Trump was speaking.
Yeah, he was kind of looking off to the side, kind of mouth slack jawed a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. He had
What are we doing here? Like,
Yeah. Well, you know what? I shut it off at one point because it was kind of like, it felt like somebody just kicking an old dog. I was like trying to stand up. You know what I mean? Like I was like, this is just abuse. I can't watch this anymore.
elderly abuse, you know?
Yeah. Well, so I turned it off as soon as he got the softball question on abortion, which he should have that was his ticket. And somehow he turned it into his weakest point, which was immigration right now. You know?
Yeah. It was like he was trying to lose at some point, which again just goes into Trump's tally of his wins.
Yeah. So obviously then that sparks this big Democratic disagreement. And basically what we're looking at is not just the Democrats. I think all the media has been focused on it. What is his viability as a candidate? He's 82. Is he 82 now or he's turning it? Okay. So he'll be 86 if he makes it all the way through, if he gets reelected. There is a noticeable difference from his 78-year-old Biden to now.
For sure. And when you have you had some minor Democrats coming out saying that he should step down, but now today, again, it's part of Trump's streak. Adam Schiff came out say he needs to step down, and that's the leader of the Senate. That's number 2 almost.
I know.
In the Democratic Party. You don't fuck.
Yeah, I saw that today. I think I saw something with, not that he's like as big as Adam Schiff, but I think Jared Huffman also, U.S. representative from California, and other rank and file Democrats are showing some concerns as well about his electability, his age and health. Can he get his vision out there? These are concerns. The problem is November's around the corner.
It is. So you would have to switch to a candidate now. You'd have to do it. Then you would who's going to do it? Is it going to be Kamala? Would it be Gavin Newsom? Will it be someone out of left field that has a bit of name recognition, but would still have to build that name recognition? And are they going to run on Biden's platform, or are they going to come up with something new?
Right. I mean, the logical choice would be to shift over to Kamala because that's the most clean way to do it. And not that I'm in love with Newsom, but I do feel like he was better suited for the race as far as he's a Democrat who can actually fight a little bit and sounds good fighting.
He's got the experience. He's got the know-how. He knows how to run for a major political office on his own.
Yeah.
Kamala did hers with Joe Biden, but he could definitely pack a punch for sure.
Right. So I could see him, but it's so late in the game at this point. I mean, you had to do this a few months ago. If you're going to, maybe if we had 6 months left, I would say that's a good idea. I don't think, and every day that goes by, it's more solidified that he has to be the one running at this point.
And he just got COVID.
Well, that's what, get to that streak. He just got COVID. So we're going to skip over a few things, but breaking news in the last hour. I'm not touching any more breaking news because I'm just scared at this point. But yes, he just got COVID. They're saying it's mild. Some of me thinks, oh, good. Now they can hide him in the basement for a few more weeks. And
maybe this is an excuse that they can finally pull the trigger.
That's what I'm wondering too, is this is going to be where he has to make the decision.
Yeah. No, there's no such thing as not serious COVID at 82 years old.
Well, that's it, right? And it's the 3rd time he's had it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I've had it twice. I still feel like there's a difference in me from before COVID. I mean, part of that's maybe age, but...
Yeah, no. It's COVID, man. It's COVID.
It's definitely COVID.
It's definitely not age.
No, that's not true. That's not happening. I'm at the peak of physical condition.
Absolutely.
All shit, no health diet is working out. So, so obviously he's got COVID, 82 years old. I don't care how many times you've had it. If it's one time, I think you're right. You could say it's mild, but it's still concerning. And I think this might be where they'll pull the trigger. I was wondering.
It would be the time, I think. And you could legitimately say okay, he has COVID. we're pulling him out. It's not just because we think he's a bumbling old man. It's serious health conditions. And we forgot to mention after the debate, days after the debate, he called Zelensky Putin.
That's right.
And he called Vice President Harris Trump.
Didn't he also say that he was honored to be the first black female vice president to the first black president?
I mean, these are things that if President Trump wrote a Santa Claus letter, these would be on the top of this list.
That's a good way to put it.
Dear Santa, make Biden call people the wrong name. Check. You've been a good boy, Donald.
I know you didn't do anything with that porn star.
Yeah.
It was 20-something years ago. Who cares?
No, he'll be like, can I have her number, please?
I can introduce you to great people, Santa. The best. You got to get rid of those elves.
They're crossing the border too much.
No, you're right. You're right. And now, to be fair, Biden always was kind of a bumbler and made a lot of gaffes.
He's a gaffe machine. I mean, this is expected of Biden.
So, yeah, but he could. But, you know, I always think about Joe Biden from like 20, 30 years ago. He probably would be a very good candidate to run against Donald Trump. He was, even though he had the gaffes, he was funny. He came across well with the working class voters. I think he could challenge Donald Trump pretty well, like as far as on the stage with, you know, I don't want to say meanness because he wasn't really mean, Joe Biden, but I think he would be able to combat that.
He's an experienced politician. And so, yeah, he could definitely handle himself, and he's charming enough where he could be self-deprecating and is going to kind of be the opposite of what Trump is. You know, Trump can't say anything negative about him, but Biden can turn into something funny, something relatable. He's got his record with unions. He's got the Rust Belt, the blue Rust Belt under his belt. They trust him. I mean, yeah, he could have been a complete foil for Trump. I mean, he was. He already beat Trump.
Yeah,
once.
He did. He did. I think he benefited from COVID a lot because he got to hide a bit, and obviously the way Trump handled that, I mean, it really lost him the election. Let's be honest, because he was riding. Not that he was ever a likable character, but this does drive me nuts because I have talked to Trump people and they always be like, he would have been elected without COVID. And I'm like, but that's significant. Like, dealing with a crisis is a significant part of being a president, and he did not deal with it in the right way. I don't care what anybody says. That's a huge factor.
That is why you elect people that you trust, because crises will come up, and you want someone who can handle a crisis.
Right. So, you know, they always throw that out there, but that's always my return on that serve. It's like, well, it happened, and he handled it in a way that obviously voters didn't care for. And that's what lost him the election.
For sure. Absolutely that. And, like, he didn't do anything with the economy to help. I mean, there was very little to do at that time, but he wasn't planning on anything. He didn't say, hey, we're going to go. He didn't have a plan.
No.
He couldn't go out to the voters and be like, all right, we're going to suffer through this. When we get under control, this is what we're going to do to get things right. This is what's hurting us. This is where we're going to be. Let's do this together. No, he just complained and said how awesome he was. And
well, I think that was a weakness for him because he had to go out every day, and he just is stream of consciousness. You know what I mean? Like, I give him a lot of credit for just going out there and just winging it. But he, you know, even that thing where he's talking about, let's shoot the, what is it? The peroxide or whatever, chlorine, whatever it was under your veins.
Yeah. Well, first it was inject bleach into your veins. It'll clear it up right away. And then he said to put UV light into your cells.
Yes. But that's him just talking out loud. The problem is he did that. It's okay, I guess, to maybe do that where nobody's looking, like you're thinking it out. But he did that in front of people.
Staff.
Yeah. Yeah. And he did that on live television. I mean.
Yeah. I heard someone try to defend him. Oh, he's being sarcastic. I'm like, this isn't the time for that. This is not the time to be sarcastic
Exactly.
when you're trying to give medical advice to the entire world.
Yeah. And that's what I mean. Everybody defends these actions, and I'm like, it doesn't matter. Like, he needed to be a certain person there, and he wasn't. So, obviously it lost him. I think it lost him the race. I think he deserved to lose for that. Not just because I don't like him. I just think that voters had enough of all the chaos. And that's what I always would laugh about, too, because he'd talk about law and order. And I'm like, motherfucker, all this shit's happening on your watch.
Right?
Your watch. That's the George Floyd protest. Yeah, this is like you're talking about law and order and trying to spin it on Biden, who's not the president. So, listen, he's always had a string of luck. I know he lost that, but he got away pretty unscathed for January 6th.
Completely unscathed.
You know, like I thought that would be the end of this whole thing. I thought that was it.
I thought they would throw him out. Throw him out of the Republican Party, or at least diminish him and be like, all right, we got somebody to do. Nope, they didn't even miss a beat. We're like, yeah, no, he's still the guy. He'll be running next time.
I think they thought he was done too. So I've heard some politicians talk about this. If they knew he would have been able to come back from that, they might have impeached him. I don't know. I don't know if they're that.
I don't.
They don't have that much courage, these guys.
No. I mean, you heard Mike McCarthy kind of go after him in private.
Yes, and the phone calls.
And Mitch McConnell as well. But then they were just like, what are you talking about? No, we didn't.
Yeah, they didn't want to take the political hit, is what ended up happening. No. They thought it was over, so.
Sucks to be McCarthy.
Yeah.
It took him political hit anyway.
I don't know. I don't know what's going on anymore. I just have resigned myself that I'm just watching the freak show of our politics from afar. I try not to get too emotionally invested anymore.
Yeah, it doesn't help anymore. I'm just waiting for the goons to come to my door and take me away for the podcast I do and stuff. Just a matter of time.
I did.
I'll enjoy it while I can.
I did tell my family I'm going to have to start changing the rhetoric a little bit over here. I will be extolling my Christian values. So, I mean, we're also white, so if we could just change in time, we might be okay.
We can change. We can slowly progress. As a joke, my in-laws or my mother-in-law gave me a beer koozie with Trump pence on it.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been like walking around the street with that outside, making it real visible, just kind of, hey guys, look what I got.
Yeah, I had the Catholic school upbringing, so I still remember something. I think I could get away enough.
I got that too. I got some Bible verses I can throw out there.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So, all right. So, I mean, we discussed the debate a bit here. I'm going to jump over to July 13th, which is the assassination attempt. And I don't know, were you home? Where were you when this happened?
I was just getting off work, and I pulled out my tablet, and I was just going to like chill out, look at some Reddit. I pull up Reddit, and I thought it was a Redditor just like making the shit post. It was like, oh, Trump being after the assassination attempt. I was like, why did you do that? Okay, whatever. And I scroll up, and there was another one. I was like, okay, maybe they're just collaborating or like posting another one. And then Dave texted me, my co-host, and he said, Trump was shot. And I was like, what? Like, this is real? So then I got onto the news, and everything was on there. And I'm just watching it. I was texting back and forth, Dave. I'm like, this can't be real. This looks fucking fake. Like I was watching it as it happened on live TV, going, this isn't real. This isn't real. But sure enough, there it is. And I was kind of in disbelief, to be honest.
Yeah. So so my daughter plays softball, and she has these like end of the year tournaments. So we were, it's like freaking 1,000,000 degrees, and I'm in Boston. I was actually in Boston when it happened, and I was at at one of the Cape Cod games, which is like a lot of the future stars of the MLB who are getting drafted and stuff play there. So it was a free night. So I'm sitting there, and my oldest son was home because he was working. He's 18. And he just texted me that somebody shot at Trump at a rally. And I was like, what does that mean? Like, did somebody run in with a gun and fire and like was 20 feet, missed horribly? Like, I just thought, like, I'm like, well, I'm surprised with all the concealed carry and all the stuff they talk about. Doesn't, like, I was thinking somebody in the crowd, like they let them in with a gun or something. I was like, I don't know what's going on. But, I was there with my daughter and her team and everybody. So I was like, I'm just going to keep it quiet, because then I looked it up and I saw some stuff and I was getting a little like, oh man, this looks like it's legit. And I was like, I'm going to keep it quiet. I told my wife. And then, so I have a 9-year-old. So all of a sudden, out of nowhere, he runs up to me in front of the team and he goes, Dad, somebody tried to shoot Donald Trump in the face. I was like, everybody's like, what? And I was like, thanks, dude. I was keeping that under wraps, because you don't know what everybody's allegiance is and like how, not that anybody's, condoning shooting, but like.
That's kind of like a can of worms just to bust out at a baseball game or softball game.
So, yeah, I was just like, but I was on my phone like feverishly during the whole game, just looking at the stuff and going back and forth with my oldest son. And then he's sending me the picture, and I'm like, is this all bullshit? Are you pulling some elaborate prank that somehow you hacked my phone, did all this to me? Because, like, how does he get, I mean, to be honest, like, obviously I've said many times I don't like the guy. I think he's a fascist. I think this and that. It's a badass photo, though. That's, like, gonna be in fucking high school books for hundreds of years.
That's generations are gonna see that photo.
I mean, him pumping
and
a fist.
him just, I mean, again, it's on Santa's fucking wish list of shit to do. What is the most badass photo of me that I could possibly get? You bleeding from the face, surrounded by Secret Service, giving a fist bump or fist pump to people. How did that happen?
That was like the first like real photo I saw of it too. And I was like, holy shit, there's like blood on his face. He's pumping a fist in the air. The American flag is behind him. The Secret Service
it's waving. And his face is perfectly in frame, in focus. Fist is up in the air. He's got that grimace on. Yeah, and he's going, what's happening? What is happening?
And
then that motherfucker barely escaped death.
He turned his head. He turned his fucking head at the right moment. I don't know if he was looking at a
graphic on screen. It was a graphic he was looking at that was coming up on screen, and he just happened in the right way to get the least amount of injury, the most effect, and that photo.
Yeah.
And then the guy to miss another, 7 times after that?
Yeah. It was later on, so I'm trying to read this, and I'm like seeing sniper, like he's trying to snipe him like with an AK-47. Like from how, like what's he doing? Like it was so confusing. So I was like confused by the whole AK-47 sniper thing. But then like as days go on, even now when they show the photos of it, it's like, he climbed on a roof. I thought he was like on a building high up, like hundreds of feet up trying to snipe him. He's like just right in sight.
He just waved at the other snipers like, hey.
Yeah, and then you
got a gun too.
So I get it. Like a lot of people are like, this looks like staged by him, or it looks like they wanted him to get shot. And I get like, there's like dueling conspiracy theories, but like all of it is just really weird.
If other people hadn't been shot in the crowd, I'd be having a hard time not believing that it was staged.
Yeah.
Because how perfect everything worked out. Unfortunately, other people were hit and one person died.
Right.
So there's that. But if that didn't happen, I would be like leaning on the fence going, I don't know, guys. Like,
I know. Yeah.
And she adds fuck.
It all around. It's really weird. I did read something that I guess he uses the same Secret Service all the time, and they're really attached to him. They said sometimes the problem with that is that you start to let like little things go rules wise. Like if you get to know the guy too much and you're too friendly with him.
Yeah, I get a little complacent.
You get lax. But usually, I mean, even for him to get his hand and his head out there, I mean, it's a money shot. You know what I mean? Like usually they push his head down and run him out. And he was able to get that shot, like I shouldn't say shot. He was able to get his head out and pump his fist and get that picture. Again, the luck that man has.
It's uncanny. I mean, it's just how is that? I don't still trying to find the word to describe all the stuff that keeps happening for him go his way.
Well, you know, now he's talking about taking the rhetoric down. The only way he could do that was something like this, because he's the guy who helps foster that type of rhetoric this whole time for years and years and years.
Yeah. People saying Biden's divisive, but he's the divisive one. This is the reason a registered Republican, opened fire on him.
Well, and here's like I've heard a couple of them talking about it, and they're saying now they're trying to pin it. It's because Biden keeps trying to call you a dictator and a fascist that somebody felt they had to take it into their own hands to shoot at the president. So now they're starting to turn that around on Biden as well, or the Democrats. And that plays into their hands.
Yeah, which is funny because Trump himself said he would be a dictator on the first day.
Yeah, well, that's what's scary about stuff like this, because it kind of gives them the opportunity. Although I don't know, like I don't know if we should go there, but like if he did get shot, what do you think happens? There's just rioting in the streets and stuff. I think.
I do think there would be violence. I think there would be a backlash. I don't know how extreme. I don't know to the extent it would be. I think they would make him into a martyr.
Yeah.
I think someone else would fill his void. Maybe not as successfully as he has, but use him. Just be like, look what they did to our leader. Look what they did. Look what they want to do to us. I mean, the rhetoric writes itself for him. I don't know how far they could go with that. I think they could win a presidential election on it for sure.
I think so too. I actually thought when it happened, I was like, well, we were texting, you and Smith, like, well, looks like November. It's going to be different.
We're fucked.
Yeah. I mean, I guess there's still time right now. Like the public's memory, not that they're going to forget this. This is going to be something etched in stone. You know, it's like remembering where you were on 9/11 or like, where my parents were when Kennedy got assassinated. You're going to remember the moment.
Yeah, but 4 months is a long time in politics. The emotions won't be as raw. It won't be as potent in 4 months. But it's still something that, it doesn't hurt him. That's for damn sure.
Well, it's also, he's talking about being a uniter at this point. Like he changed his speech. Can he keep his own words? You know what I mean? Like, I can't see it going that long. I understand he thinks he had some kind of maybe he thinks he's got a divine mission now. I know I will say this, when I see him accepting the nomination, I think it's going to be a very interesting speech, which would be tomorrow night, I think on the 18th. So by the time this comes out, I'm sure the speech will be there.
It's just a shame that something like this had to happen, because now it's about the political violence. The shooter took away our ability to have a discourse about politics. Now it's about, look what they're trying to do to us.
The only thing I would push back is, like, we have not had a discourse on politics. If we had a true political debate on the issues, Biden should be able to mop the floor with his last 4 years. I'm sorry. People get mad at that. But his track record is really, in my lifetime, I don't know if anybody has a better track record in the first 4 years like that.
No, especially on the progressive end of it, and turning an economy around like that and making things better for people. The job creations alone are significant, hugely significant. And the first sitting president, to walk a picket line. That's a major deal.
But this is the problem with his age. And I listened to a podcast. I don't remember who the guy was, but it was on Plain English with Derek Thompson. I forget who it was. It was some guy who follows elections or whatever. And he says he's a policy one. He goes, I love policy. I just love getting into the weeds of it. And I love every 4 years I could talk to people about it. He goes, I can't get anybody to talk to me about policy. They're just talking about age, about both their ages and who's more fit. And we that's all we're focused on. But that is the sad thing, I think, for Joe Biden, because I don't understand. I just don't understand the Democrats. They've always just had the worst ground game. How they can't sell 15 million jobs. Now, I know 9.5 million. Exactly. 9.5 million jobs. They said, well, that was because of COVID. They lost 9.5 million. Okay. So that means if you want to take that, he still got them back and then had a net gain of 5.5 million jobs. It's a pretty good track record in 4 years. You know, another thing they never talk about is that they're actually pushing back against monopolies more than I've seen in the last 40 years anybody doing. I mean, they're going after Google. These are long, hard processes because these guys have a battalion of lawyers who get paid, you know, $10,000 an hour or whatever the hell it is. But they are going after these guys. They've went after the junk fees on, I believe, the airlines. They went after them, and then they're going after Ticketmaster now. These are wildly popular to people, even if they don't understand the mechanism. Nobody knows about it. Nobody.
Even before Biden became president, he went after big corporations on book taxes compared to off book taxes. So company could just say, no, we didn't make this. Well, we put it into another department, so it's not a profit. But he's saying, no, you did before you put it into something else. You pay taxes on that, on the book taxes. Yeah. And he just recently, past couple of days, came out with term limits for SCOTUS, Code of Ethics form, that actually can be upheld. Things like that. I mean, these are progressive ideas that he's still coming out with in the middle of his campaign. But do we hear about it? No, we just hear about his gaffes and him blundering, or him. A man that's had 2 brain aneurysms is slurring his speech slightly. That's what we hear about. Right.
I mean, you could actually say he got some kind of significant gun legislation, right? They established an Office of Gun Violence Prevention. And even the CHIPS Act you could look at.
The CHIPS Act. Yeah, the PACT Act.
The PACT Act. I'm just like, as far as I don't know, maybe in my lifetime, it's always been, you know, there's people who love Reagan, there's people who love Bill Clinton, and then after that it gets a little hairy. I mean, Obama probably doesn't get enough credit, even though I think he could have done more. But
yeah,
but I look at
the structure bill as well.
But that's what I mean. I look at the record in the first 4 years, and I try to compare it to the others, and I don't know how this isn't being sold to people. And the only thing I can think about is, well, one, political brinksmanship. Nobody's going to give credit to it on the other side, and that's fine. You'll have your base, and you got to convince, 10% of people who are independents or whatever the hell it is. Well, it's a lot more now these days, but you just have to convince that core that you've done that. But it never, I don't even hear, like, why don't they have Harris out there talking about it? I mean, she could very well be the next president tomorrow if shit goes wrong. I feel like they're always on the defensive about everything.
It's like they're scared.
They always play scared. I don't know why. They play scared constantly.
You know, instead of attacking the sitting president, saying he's too old, he needs to drop out, why not tout his record?
Yeah.
And then behind doors go, what the fuck are we going to do with Biden? No, they're coming out in the media and saying it, and like everyone's just going, oh my God, why are you trying to eat your own?
Right. I mean, I'd almost spin it as like, I've had this conversation with my father, and I said, because he's like, well, I don't think he's really running the country. I said, great because compared to Trump, I don't care if they stick Biden's head in formaldehyde and run it around the country. I'm going to vote for his head in formaldehyde.
Toronto style.
But I said, well, then you still can sell it. People who don't think he's running the country, it's like, well, do you like what is happening, though? Do you like some of these things that have been passed? Because if he's not running the country and he does pass away or whatever could happen, or he has to step down or they invoke the 25th, that means there's an infrastructure in place, that there is still momentum going in that direction.
It wouldn't miss a beat.
Exactly.
We're getting all these landmark legislation coming through. And I also I don't believe he's running the country. So the Democrats are so amazing that they can run the country with an old man as a figurehead, stuff ballot boxes, cheat, have Jewish space lasers come down and burn California, but yet are so inept they can't close the border.
Well, yeah, so that's another thing that drives me nuts because remember, McConnell actually made some kind of deal with Senate Democrats, and Trump told, not McCarthy.
Johnson.
Yeah, Speaker
Mike
Johnson,
yeah.
Don't bring it to the floor.
Yeah, because he needs it to run on.
Because that's his what he's running on, is that there's
why are we hearing about that from the Democrat Party?
The worst? I don't know. I'm trying to figure out why they're so bad at this. Like how they got so bad. And the only thing I could really think is, after FDR went in office, they had an easy run. Maybe not at the presidency. It went back and forth, but let's face it. Eisenhower, even if you want to get up to Nixon, are different types of Republicans than after 1980. But the Democrats owned Congress for 50 years or whatever until, Newt came around and changed all of that.
Yeah, Boehner and the Tea Party.
Yeah. And I wonder if they just never had to fight and then Republicans did and they learned how to fight just better and nastier. I don't know. They're
willing to take off the gloves and hit the mat kind of thing. Did you ever watch West Wing?
In bits and pieces a long time ago, yeah.
Well, they're running Bartlett's second campaign, and they bring in a political consultant, and he's going on this tirade about the Democrats, and it's literally like this. He goes, I'm tired of running away. When we run a campaign, we say, please don't hurt me. And it's like, exactly what the Democrats do.
Yeah, I look at some of these things and I have no clue how people think about it. I mean, student loans, like you said, abortion. You talked about the CHIPS Act, but there's just so many little things that he can be touting, and they don't.
In my opinion, he should just be ignoring Trump and just running solely on his record.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what I would do. Even with inflation, which hurt him, he could sit there and say, you want to look at Europe, look at their economy and look at their inflation. And we were way better at keeping all this stuff under control than they were over there.
Any peer economy around the world has almost double our inflation.
Right. And I think that says something about some of the things he did. I know that sucks. Listen, it sucks for me when I go to the food store. I also can't stand that. I think everybody knows it's really like greedflation, I blame.
Oh, yeah.
That's like 53% of it they found out. And I'd also argue higher because then the other 20-something% is the supply chains. But that has to do with greed from a long time ago. They condensed all the supply chains to make bottom line better. So they helped cause the supply chain issue when COVID came. I mean, they put it in motion a long time ago. So again, they laugh on earnings calls about it, that we're pushing the consumer just enough. We don't want to break them, but, our profits are just skyrocketing during this time.
Record profits all around from major companies.
Yeah. And that's what's different, too, though, nowadays. Like, they're just out in the open about all this shit.
Yeah, it's like we can do this in the open now. We don't have to hide it.
They don't even try to hide it, any of these things. And to me, like, companies, I don't look at them from like the political lens the same way. I don't look at them as like Republican or Democrat because I think they try to buy everybody out. So they're just some kind of like evil entity on the side. I don't know.
Oh no, Jay, they're people. Corporations are people. Ted Cruz taught us this.
That's right. That's right. I forgot. I was being mean to the corporation people.
Yeah.
Trying to hurt their value, and I apologize greatly for that.
Yeah, man. Be inclusive. 2024.
Be inclusive. DEI, baby. DEI.
Yes, I've still not seen a corporation in handcuffs.
Yeah, I know. Well, that's like another thing, right? Even back in 2008, and I think it's going to go into a larger point. So I think that's a huge issue. Obviously, these things have built up over time. The distrust in everything. You know, going back to the 70s, I mean, the distrust in government, obviously with Watergate, stagflation, and Vietnam, everything that happened started that roller coaster. And then, you know, I forget, I had a point about the corporations and stuff. But anyway.
That's in regulation brought on from Reagan and the whole 1980s.
I'll tell you, so where he was politically very smart was he picked like the opportune time to do all that. Like, I kind of get why it worked what he did, because like everybody's distrust was just at an all-time high, and he just came in and said, you know, the worst words you want to hear is, I'm from the government, I'm here to help.
I'm here to help, yeah.
You know, and I could see during the time why that would have worked. Like everybody was just like, let's try this shit.
I agree with you, because everyone's kind of bad taste in their mouth. People are making money. Corporations are making money, and then you're like, all right, this guy wants to trickle down. What does that mean? Oh, I get a piece of that pie too. Turns out it's full of shit, but you know, you can see why people are buying into that.
It sounds like a good theory. I mean, but
sounds reasonable,
right? I mean,
and I can understand it. Yeah, you know, it's not complicated.
Well, the problem is they deregulated to the point too where these guys, you couldn't do stock buybacks, I think, before 83 or 81. So now with the trickle down money, they could just buy their stock and inflate the shit out of it. They never put it back in.
Yeah, they keep their profits. They don't give it to you and me.
Right. But he's an interesting character. But when I read his legacy, like the legacy versus what he did is very different. He was also just much more prone to making a deal, even though it would favor, like he would sit there and say, well, I'm getting 70% of what I want. Why am I going to fight on the other 30%? Let's just get this thing done. We don't have that. And now it's just like,
No, politics has completely changed on that. I mean, even Bush Sr. and Clinton could at least do that. I mean, Clinton did that quite a bit. But now the political fervor is too much, because it's gone too extreme that if anybody tries to reach over the aisle for anything significant or any of the culture war type aspects, it's seen as a betrayal to the other side.
Yeah. I always argue that Clinton's almost more of a moderate Republican than he was. So whenever somebody brings up this thing, I've seen this online, I've heard this in certain podcasts, I will not name them, but they'll be like, I'm getting pushed right by the left. And I'm always like, motherfucker, like taxes are as low as they can go for corporations. Abortion is illegal in some states. There's no Roe v. Wade. And
they're talking about going on the abortion thing. They're talking about prosecuting people for helping.
I mean, they're talking about like
abortions
across state lines. It's silly when I hear that. Like, I know so I always use Clinton as like my example, because then some people will be like, well, yeah, Clinton was, Democrat or whatever, even though, and I'm like, let's take a look at Clinton's record. Do you think he was closer to LBJ or closer to Richard Nixon, record-wise?
I'd say Richard Nixon for sure.
And if Nixon was around today, he would be considered a Democrat. Easily. He started the EPA, opened up talks with China, and he was a Keynesian. He said he believed in Keynesian economics.
Yeah. He just had the Secretary of State who was a war criminal warmonger.
Yeah. There's definitely some things there. But that's what my point is, just like, he's closer to a Richard Nixon to me than an LBJ's Great Society.
I've read a lot about Clinton stuff, and the more you read about him, the more you realize he's a centrist through and through, if not bending to the right. Like even on domestic policies and stuff, he goes right down the middle. There's nothing extreme this way. There's nothing extreme that way. It's all about getting the deal done.
Right.
It's why he was able to balance the budget, because he was able to play on that capital of, hey, let's do something together.
Yeah. Well, he said we're going to have to raise the taxes, but we're going to cut spending, and that includes some of these programs that were for poor people, you know. All right. I'm going to jump back because I don't even know if we really talked too much about July 15th. Sorry, people. With a judge dismissing.
Well, we actually
Trump's.
had a plan to this show.
Yeah,
Okay,
we
cool.
did. This is kind of like what happened on your show. I don't even know how you cut it down to whatever you got it to, because it was like for fucking ever.
I spent an entire Saturday editing that show.
I know.
Because it was so, like, there was so much good stuff in there. I didn't want to take it out. And I was like, just trying to piece it together. And I got it down to what we had. And
I think you got it just under 2 hours, like 150
Yeah.
or something. But it was you cut a good bunch out. But I just remember you texted me at one point. You're like, "Fuck it, I'm just putting this out."
Yes, I was done. It was like Saturday evening. I'm like, I'm done.
Yeah. So getting back, I think we started to touch on this, but July, the luckiest man alive. Let's just go back to the luckiest political streak. This is like the 56 game hit streak to me. July 15th, 2 days after the assassination attempt, Judge Aileen Cannon dismisses the federal government's classified documents case against Donald Trump. Now, the ruling is that special counsel Jack Smith was unconstitutional. The appointment of, his appointment as special counsel was unconstitutional.
And if you get kind of in the more nitty gritty, the reason it was unconstitutional is the way he's being funded is unconstitutional, but she doesn't actually spell it out. So it's a really muddy water. But yeah, you kind of got the idea of her throwing out the case. A special counsel was put into place, which happens all the fucking time.
Yeah, that's what made me laugh. I was like, that's like all the time there's a special counsel, but she pulled the unconstitutional card because I guess Congress didn't vote. They didn't vote to,
which never happens.
But like, that's a first. Well, they said she was very thorough in writing her opinion so that it couldn't be challenged, basically. Or that even if you did challenge it, it's going to be so far after the election, it's not even worth it at this point.
Yeah, and so it was a 93-page document that she was sitting on, and she released it a couple days before the RNC.
She also she's made it difficult since the very beginning of that case.
Oh, yeah, she's been up, like, one of the things she did, she opposed a hypothetical question to the counsel. It had nothing to do with the case. And when counsel came and said, we're not answering this because it's irrelevant, why are we even doing this? She just went, that's because I said you have to. So they did it. And then she came back, was like, oh, well, then I need to look over this, so I'm delaying the trial even further. So, I mean, there's been a string of mishaps with her, and she's been rebuked by the 11th Circuit twice, I believe. Her decisions have been overturned. And Jack Smith has brought this to the 11th Circuit's attention, but as you said before, it's going to be after the election that anything gets resolved.
You know, you can actually go back a little further. I'm doing the streak starting at...
oh, fantastic. Can we please?
At the at the debate, but you also had the immunity case, which went in his favor as well.
Supreme Court ruling that a president can do whatever the fuck he wants.
It's such a weird issue. I mean, I get that there's some legal precedents they try to use, which was Nixon versus Fitzgerald, which protected him from liability, I guess, civilly. They didn't want to see the president dragged into court for a civil case.
I can understand that argument because the president has to do things that nobody else in the world has to do. They they create consequences just by the sheer nature of their job.
Right.
However, I still think there is legalities that do apply to the president.
Well,
And
yeah. I mean, the problem too is the scope of the immunity and the scope of his job is so vague that we have no clue what that even means at this point.
And I was thinking about this the other day. If the president does something that's an unofficial act, that they rule as an unofficial act, and he gets charged with it, but if he accepted a pardon, like a blanket pardon, he would have that comes with the caveat that he admits that what he did is illegal.
True.
If he's president, he's immune. So would that negate the validity of the pardon?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I don't know.
This is what I do, sitting at work. And
Yeah, I know. But it's just, I mean, I was going to ask a lawyer to come on and just try to kind of explain it to me. But, I mean, just from what I can understand now, I guess it's far-fetched to say he's got complete immunity. I don't think Biden can go out with death squads and stuff like that because that is not really a constitutional act. But, they were getting to the point where it's like now the Georgia case, which out of all the cases, the case in Georgia is the most important to me because I feel like that's a slam dunk. And him and all those guys tried to go around the Constitution. Not a little people will hear about it because now when the hell is this going to get tried? But they wanted to send a bunch of fake electors. Forget about the Capitol riot. Okay. I mean, you can get into that too. But the big thing was that he called up the sitting governor and said, I just need to find 11,780 votes, which is one more.
Was it the governor or was it Secretary of State?
It may have been. Oh, it was Ratz. Yeah, you're right. That's the COVID. That's the COVID talking.
Charge of the election.
Right. But to me, that is the very definition of election interference. And then when you get into those lawyers, what they were throwing out there was like insane. These ideas of throwing out a bunch of fake electors to fight when they got to the Capitol and then have Mike Pence say, well, I'm just throwing this all out. These guys don't count. This doesn't count. And, and my other thing was if he was fighting this, why did he fight it in only the states he needed to win?
Exactly. That was always my thing. It was like, why isn't he?
It's 5 states.
All.
Yeah, the 5 swing states. And exactly what he needs to win. Here's my question. This bothers me with the media. I've asked this before, and nobody has an answer. If I am a journalist, my question to him, or like I'm at the debate, my first question is, President Trump, you have said that the elections are rigged. You said you won the last election. The Democrats stole it. Why would you run in an election that you know you can't win? That's rigged. Why? Is he going to answer? There's no answer for that.
Jay, would you kindly step into this car waiting for you outside?
That's my first question. That's my own. Really, it's my only question, and I'll follow up from there. But
what baffles me is kind of on the lines of that question is these things aren't hard to point out. Why aren't we hammering them home constantly? Why is he running with J.D. Vance? Because he almost had his fucking other vice president hung.
Right.
Hanged.
Either way, I'll accept it.
Strung up. How about that? I mean, that's why he's not a different vice president.
I know. I was thinking about that too. I was
why isn't this a huge issue?
Yeah, and that's where I laugh. And part of going back to that book, they were talking about how from about the 70s on, or maybe 68 even, because that's like the year that kind of breaks America.
68
is about the year. I always consider that's the beginning of the conservative movement. But there was always this thing in the press that conservatives go into the press saying they do not get treated fairly. They do not get treated fairly. They keep hammering that home. And even to this day,
they do like to play the victim.
Well, here's the thing. Like, sometimes they say it so much, I start to think it. Like, I start to hear something, and I'm like, that sounds very biased by the left. But then I remember, we're not talking about, since he got the bullet that grazed his ear, the magic bullet. We don't talk about Project 2025, right? Because I think that was starting to get some steam and lose him a lot of points after getting that big bump from Biden. He was starting to get knocked back down. We're not talking about Epstein. I mean, shouldn't that be a huge conversation? A huge conversation. We're not talking about that. And even
twice.
Yeah, I don't know.
Said before, that assassination attempt has taken, we don't have the same political discourse, but it's taken that politics completely away. Now it's just about the assassination attempt. There is no chance for these things to come out, like the Epstein files and Project 2025, like you said. So that's we've been robbed of that.
Yeah, yeah.
That's about they're trying to kill Trump.
And Democrats will go on super defensive because they don't want to be looked at like, they're going to think that we were rooting for this or we tried to do it, and that's exactly, that's what Democrats do though. The second part of my January 6th interview, that's what we get into that a little bit. And we're talking about how like they just have the worst ground game. Like if they ran somebody like even a 60s type of Democrat who just seemed like he wasn't scared and gave a shit about working people more, like I just don't think they could lose an election.
Yeah, it's not hard because these things are out in the open.
Yeah,
you just keep pivoting back to it. You don't even have to try. It's kind of like Trump at debate. You don't have to try. You just have to say the words.
He just dropped back into like, whatever.
Yeah, there you go.
I'll just let him do whatever he wants. So,
yeah. That document case being thrown out, that's huge because I know you talked about the Georgia one about overthrowing the election, but this one was touted as being the most winnable with the best evidence.
Probably true because the evidence is just right there.
Yeah, it's literally mountains of paperwork.
Right, where he just takes his shit and grabs a fucking stack of paperwork to look at.
Oh, what are the nuclear codes? I don't know. Let's find it.
Yeah,
remember when Trump, I think it was his first year or whatever, he had the Chinese delegation at Mar-a-Lago and he was showing them satellite images.
Yeah. I was actually going to bring that up. I remember something with that.
Then, 6 months later, I think the timeline may be wrong on this, but he tweeted pictures of an Iranian missile silo.
Yes.
Top secret satellite image.
You know what I always wonder, though? For a dude who just has no filter, I'm waiting for him to talk about Kennedy or something. Like, did they just never tell him? They're like, just don't even tell him about what happened with Kennedy.
Yeah, they may have been just like, no, we can't. These files are going to remain secret.
We're going to lose these files right now.
Yeah. Well, there was a book I read by one of the fucking staff members that wrote a book about him. It was one of the chief staffs, I believe, but they would do stuff like that. He was talking about one meeting in the Oval Office, Trump's going off about South Korea or North Korea, and there was a memo on his desk from the chief of staff, and he just grabbed it and turned it over so Trump wouldn't look at it.
Is this the Woodward wrote about that too?
Woodward did, yeah. That's a great book, actually. Woodward.
Peril or whatever? Is that Peril? He wrote two. One was Fear and Peril or something. That might have been Fear. I think Peril was about the him and Biden during the election.
That might be. Yeah, he did write two books. But yeah, Fear was definitely one of them. But they would do shit like that where they just forget to give him
I heard
papers on shit.
Yeah, I read that. I read that too.
Fuck, man.
They would
Scaramucci, he went on CNN and was saying the same thing. He's like, yeah, I just would forget about orders and shit. My day and a half that I was in the White House.
They said that also if they wanted to change his mind, they just mentioned the economy. So like the Joint Chiefs of Staff realized if he had a really bad idea, like I want to go nuke this place or something, They'd be like, okay, no, you could do that. And they're like, but, you know, the ripple effects in the economy, the stock market would definitely go down. Like, that's how they talked to him. And they realized they could get him to really do anything if they mentioned it might hurt the stock market or the economy.
Yeah, it's that's terrifying when you have to do that to the sitting fucking president.
I know. When I read some of that stuff, I was like, this can't be real. I mean, it has to be real, but it can't be real.
Yeah, and like you're shocked, but not shocked all at the same time.
Right.
You're like, this is what I imagine it to be. Oh, great, it's real. Fuck.
What I love about Woodward, it depends on who's in office. He's always somehow turns into a shill for the other team by whoever's there. Because he wrote the Obama book, and then everybody was going crazy because they said how Pelosi and all of them used to like roll their eyes on the phone calls when he was talking about healthcare, and I'll be a one-term president for this. And they're like, oh, here he goes again with this shit. But I never understand how he has so much access to these people. Like, why would they give him access? He always makes them look like shit.
Well, he's been around for fucking ever, I guess, you know?
Yeah, I'm always...
Better the devil you know, so to speak.
Yeah. Well,
someone's going to come after you, and maybe Woodward.
He was ringing the lines about the fascist parts of Trump for a long time. Long before he said he's got a little too much of a fascistic tendencies I see in him, you know. But Woodward around forever.
I mean, you can criticize Woodward's conclusions all you want, but his research is phenomenal.
Yes, and then he's got so much access to people. Yeah. I always enjoy reading him because I always feel like I'm getting like an actual bird's eye view of what's going on in the Oval Office.
It's like you are the fly in the wall when you read Woodward.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know. Like I saw him on something and he wouldn't say his political affiliation. I remember. Oh, he might have been on Mar once, and he's like, I'm not going to tell you that. Like they're trying to ask him who he's going to vote for. I think this was back in the Bush days when Kerry was running, and he's like, I don't talk about that stuff. And they're like, please.
As being an actual journalist, holy shit!
Yeah, I know.
What's that?
Yeah, well, it's tough though. Like these guys, I don't know. It's all like a game with these guys, right? Like they go on these 24-hour news channels, and it's just, I don't know. It's like this fake anger with each other, but they like need each other. So there's like a gentleman's agreement somewhere there.
Yeah, it's definitely entertainment rather than news.
Yeah, I think that there's some kind of value there because the guys I like are always like these underground type of journalists who never, and I've seen them where they're like, oh, I'll never get invited to a correspondence dinner, you know, like I talk too much about what's going on, but you know, it's but it's just funny, like, so a lot of these guys, they get a lot of praise, like, oh, did you hear what he said to Senator whoever? And I'm like, yeah, but he also got invited to, like, the White House. Like, he wouldn't get invited to the White House if he was doing his job all the way.
Nah, it's like, it's your fucking job, too.
Yeah.
Ask these questions.
The nuttiest...
Get to.
Yeah. The nuttiest I ever went, I, like, literally was cursing in my living room was... when it was Don Lemon. I had CNN on for some reason, and they were talking about the Affordable Care Act. And there was it wasn't out yet. It was when they were debating, and there was like 900 pages of it so far. And they're going back and forth, and there's death panel talk, and there's this talk, and there's that talk. And a housewife had read 600 pages of it. Very well versed on it, too, by the way. And she went on CNN and started talking, and he started asking questions. She's like, that's not true. And she had like things marked out. She's like, on page whatever, this says this. There's no such thing as a death panel. There's no this and that. And Don Lemon goes to her. He goes, do you think it would be helpful if members of the media read the act and then, you know, disseminated it to you? And I was like, motherfucker, that is your job. You just told me your job. What are you doing? What do you mean? Why would... What the fuck kind of question is that?
Yeah, you're talking to a layperson.
Yeah.
What you're supposed to be doing.
I like screamed. I was like, motherfucker, that's your job.
Yeah, I mean, because we need these people. Because I don't know about you, Jay. I don't have time to go through all the bills and stuff.
Yeah.
And in nitty gritty detail. I mean, I have to rely on people that you kind of have to trust them.
No, that's
to kind of give you the information. And when they're going, oh, I'm supposed to be doing that shit.
He just like didn't even know that was his job to do.
Yeah.
Didn't even know. Didn't even fake it. Like, can't they have somebody else read it? Like a staff, almost like a staffer, and just fucking give him the bullet points at least? Jesus Christ. It was like...
Or just have a team of people be like, all right, you take pages 1 to 100. You take 2 to 300, and we'll gather the notes. I mean,
well, that's what congressmen do. They have staffers who actually like read the bills and fucking go over the shit and get stuff taken out, get stuff in it. The congressmen are too busy trying to raise money and get like their face on television. They don't actually read bills anymore. Maybe there's a few who do. I can imagine Bernie Sanders is a guy who does it, and a few others.
Yeah, kind of your more established politicians who aren't raising money all the time, that they're a little more comfortable with their base, have a little more time to kind of check over the bills coming through the Senate.
Yeah.
I can see that. I guarantee you, like, fucking Marjorie Taylor Greene doesn't read a fucking word. If she can actually read, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, that's like a whole other level. When I was on your show, she was selling all the merch. Remember, she was selling the Uniparty. Was it Uniparty merch or something like that? It was amazing. That was when she got in trouble. Oh, she wanted to get Johnson kicked out.
That's right, yeah.
And the Democrats ended up saving him anyway. But like the Republicans were like, don't fucking do this. We're done looking like the fucking clown show with this shit. Don't put it out. And then she tried to put it out, and she was calling them the Uniparty and talking about Ukraine and stuff. But they were like, it wasn't called Uniparty. I forget what it was.
Oh my God.
It was a
it?
variation of MAGA, but it wasn't that. It was like Make America something again. I forget.
Yeah, it was something really ridiculous.
But I was like, damn, she's just trying to sell her merch. That's all she fucking do at this point. She's like the reason when I look at gerrymandering, I'm like, oh my God. This is the only reason she's got a fucking position.
Oh, yeah. Just, I think she's useful in the way that she takes a lot of heat away from other Republicans. They're just like, oh, look at the crazy one. Now let's stop all abortions. When I can't find it.
Yeah, I think she took it down, but it was pretty fucking stellar. I wish I bought something now.
Yes. Yeah, for when the goons come, we could just put that on.
Yeah, well, she's also like, so she made her way to the Senate partly because of, or I should say the House, I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah, she's in the House.
Yeah, from gerrymandering, but she also takes like a lot of those little donations from around the country, from like wingnuts.
Yeah, Matt Gaetz does that too.
So a lot of those guys, these like fringe guys and stuff like that, they're kind of, I remember listening to some show, it was called Meet Me in the Middle. They were talking about this, and they're saying like back in the day, you used to have like the GOP bosses and the Democratic bosses who basically were like, no, you can run and you'll win that district, like backroom deals and shit. And they're like, you really can't do that anymore because is that the McCain-Feinstein thing that came together? I can't remember off the top of my head. I'm going to blame COVID. Not my age. But they basically said like, yeah, the problem is like they don't have the same control over these people because they get little donations from the other side of the country. And anybody who donates from like the other side of the country to a little place in like Louisiana or wherever, they're fucking wingnuts. That's the only people who are going to donate to that kind of stuff, those little donations, but they all add up.
Seems to make a difference.
Yeah. But I think you're right. Like, she probably is good for taking some heat.
Distraction.
Yeah, it's definitely a distraction. I mean, I've never seen anybody, well, I've seen a few now, but people who will tweet, I get it like normal people. Like, I get weird when I tweet. I'm like, I better like triple check what I'm writing here because like factually, am I right? It's out there forever. And
screenshots exist.
And I'm like, she just writes shit that I'm like, you didn't even check the spelling? You didn't check your fucking grammar? Like, besides what you said, like, it's fucking crazy.
Yeah, what was that one she got blasted for? Oh, the ages of the signers of the Declaration of Independence.
Yes, that's like what I'm talking about.
And I think only one.
Well, one wasn't even a signer.
No, she had that weren't signed.
She had like 3 or 4, who weren't. I gotta
Hamilton was on there.
She had was it not Paul Revere?
Yeah, no, she had Paul Revere on there.
They're like,
I'm on Twitter because of the podcast,
right?
But I don't sign up to these people, but they're always in my feed.
I know. I'm going to be honest. It's been worse since Elon took it over.
Oh, it's been 10 times worse. I get end wokeness is always on there. Marjorie Taylor Greene's on there. Elon's always on there. And I'm like, I don't interact with any of these. Why do they keep coming up? And like ones that I do interact come up every now and then. Yeah,
well, it's so funny because he's always the one yelling about free speech and shit. You say one thing bad about him, you're gone. Like, he just kicks you off. And then I
had to open a whole new Twitter account because
oh yeah, Smith got like a little shadow ban. So, well, I did the one episode on the called the Charity Laundromat, which was about like the rich cycling their money through basically billionaires. They'll put it into these funds for charity, but it never goes to charity. Then they sign one of their family members. It goes into this thing. But he was like a huge focus on that. And when I remember putting it on X, and I was like, I don't think I'm going to mention his name. Like, this is like, he's never going to hear it, but I don't want to draw any attention to him on it.
Yeah, I got our account. Well, they didn't ban the account completely. To reinstate the account, I had to type in the email address, but every time I put my email address in, it would say it was the wrong email address.
Gotcha.
So I'm like, motherfucker. But there's no way I can change it because I'm banned. Yeah.
So she wrote that James Madison, so there's a whole bunch, but she had James Madison, Alexander Hamilton, James Monroe, Aaron Burr, Paul Revere, and George Washington, who were not signers of the Declaration of Independence. And
I remember reading it because it was kind of early in the morning. I was kind of going through the Twitter messages and shit. And I saw it, and I was like, hold on. Like, did I read? Like, I had to read it like 5 times.
My wife said that to me because she knows, like, that's one of the times in American history that I get, like, crazy about, that I've just fucking read to death. And I'm, like, looking at it. Would you have ever, like, something so wrong you question yourself?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was doing, man.
I'm like, wait a second.
Screenshotted it and sent it to Dave because that's his period of history too. And he just texts back. He's like, "I'm not dumb enough to read this." Fair enough, man.
I like this one. Representative Jack Kimball wrote, "How did you forget Johnny Appleseed, Paul Bunyan, and Ronald Reagan?"
That's fantastic.
Oh my god! You slept during your high school middle school history class, didn't you? I don't understand how she could just throw that out there though, and like never have checked that.
Or just show it to a staffer real quick. Like, are we cool?
Right. Like, can you check this for me? Because it's not even like, I see it happen accidentally with retweets and stuff. Like, people just get stupid. I'll give them a pass on it.
When you sit there writing it out.
She wrote that out. She looked up that information and somehow came to the conclusion that Paul Revere.
Paul Revere.
That's my favorite one. Is like when I saw Paul Revere, I was like, what the fuck? It's like Paul Revere. I know.
And these are the leaders of our country.
These are the leaders. I always think we're totally off topic, but that's okay. People are just going to have to deal with this shit. I always wonder this when I read that period, and I always like, it's probably a good question for Smith and Dave, but I always think the Constitution's a renegade document. Like, they were supposed to go there to, the Continental Congress was getting together because they're basically like fucking funny money everywhere. Nobody wants to do trade with us because they can't fucking trust anybody's money. It's just a huge, huge issue for the new country. Nothing was really enforceable. Like, if you had a debt somewhere else, nobody really paid their tax to the federal government. So they were all sent just to make the Articles of Confederation better. Fix it up. Make it enforceable. They were not sent there to write a constitution. And they weren't telling people they were doing that. So I'm always like, dude, is the Constitution actually constitutional? You know what I mean? Like,
That's, I've never actually thought about it that way. But you're right.
It's a renegade document. There's 56 guys who just decided they were going to do that.
Yeah. And when you say not paying their taxes, they were actively going to find and kill the taxpayer.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, the whole Whiskey Rebellion was just around that time, too.
That's right. That's one of the things. Yep.
You have a huge amount of the rural population actively fighting against you, and a U.S. Army that didn't really exist after getting their teeth knocked in by the Native Americans for a long time. And Alexander Hamilton he wanted to go crush rebellion, and Washington was like, with who? Who's going to crush this rebellion? Because I don't have anybody.
Yeah. Well, he had a march, remember? Like, he's the only active president who did that.
Yeah. Yeah. And then even after that, he was like, this probably doesn't look the best. I'm actively marching against my own people. But yeah, to actually go in and create this document with people not overly sympathetic towards the government. I've never thought about it as a rogue document before. That's interesting.
I always wondered. Now I understand. Made its way through. It took a long time to get past. Like, so that's the other thing that bothers me is when we talk about the founding. We think about, this is actually the first episode I did with Smith on my show. How when I met him, we talked a lot about this stuff. But people think of like 3 or 4 guys when they talk about the founding fathers, you know. But when we're trying to talk about their vision, I mean, that's so skewed because, like I said, I think it's 56 went. Some were hardly there. You know, they're back and forth. 51 signed, 41 signed. I forget what the number is off the top of my head.
I can't remember off the top of my head.
But then they had to go debate the goddamn thing in each state. And, I mean, the thing almost didn't get passed. They talked Madison into adding a Bill of Rights to help get it passed. So there wasn't a Bill of Rights in there originally. It went back.
Wow, did you know Thomas Jefferson is just going, guys, come on, I have slaves to impregnate here? Like, seriously? Can we move this on?
Well, here's another good point is Thomas Jefferson's in France. John Adams is in England. And those are 2 minds who helped start this whole thing who weren't there.
Yeah.
You know? And Jefferson had a lot of issues with, like, him and Madison talking about it. It's funny because Jefferson's the one who was always like, every 19 years we should do a constitutional convention because, and I got his idea is like, because then the last generation is infringing on the rights of the new generation. And Madison was like, are you out of your fucking mind? Do you know how hard this was to do? I don't know how we got it through. That's why there's like so much incongruity in there, like the 3/5 clause and even the electoral college. I've read somewhere Madison's like, that'll be gone in like 20 years, 30 years. We'll just get rid of that. Like that's never going to stay. But,
well, and you can see both sides of the argument with Jefferson every 20 years because things become part of your society that didn't exist 20 years ago. I mean, if you went to the founding fathers now, I'd be like, what are your views on digital privacy?
right.
But also, you see the other thing, like, do you know how many state congresses we had fucking sit in the dead of summer?
That's the other thing. It was like the hottest summer on record at that point. And I just imagine like it must have smelled like shit because they had horse and carriages shitting all over the place in the heat. Like that's what he kind of said with some of the Madison said some of the stuff they agreed to was just because it's been 3 months. It was hot as hell. They were tired. They wanted to go home. And they're like, well, we put clauses in here that says they could just get rid of this shit by passing a constitutional amendment. But you know how that fucking worked out. We only had 13 fucking states, so you only needed to get like 8 or 9 of them to agree at the time. But yeah, now it's impossible. I mean, now you have nothing. What's the last one that got passed? Was just to increase the pay or something of the congressman? I think the last one was with Clinton.
I'm gonna look that up. States are required any change to the rate of compensation for members of U.S. Congress to take effect only after the subsequent election in the House of Representatives. So yeah, like 27.
I also fight. This gets people not happy. I also think these guys should get paid much more than they do and just sign all kinds of non-compete type of clause things. In other words, so I would pay these guys a lot of money and I would say like you basically, once you leave government, you can't go into like business for like 12 years on like certain things, right?
It's not a terrible idea, yeah.
And then they can invest their money, but only in like some kind of, I'm not a finance guy, but like the ones that make like 3 to 5%.
Like bonds or something like that, or like a Vanguard.
And so one of the best ideas, and it was like, I used to love him. I don't know what really happened to him, but I was a big Andrew Yang guy when he was around, like in the beginning.
Oh, the Universal Income dude.
Yes.
Well, the Forward Party, right?
Well, now it's the Forward Party. I don't even know what the fucking platform is. He lost whatever. He kind of lost his mind with that shit. I don't know what happened, but I liked when he was running because he had a lot of really good ideas. But like I had heard him talking to somebody who was in a crowd. He was visiting like some place, and the lady goes, "You could say all you want. How are you going to get these guys to work for you? Like, how are you going to get somebody who's auditing a bank to work for you?" And he's like, well, this is what I would do. Like off the top of his head, just off the cuff. I mean, he thought about everything. He goes, these guys make $60,000 a year. Then they go to JP Morgan Chase to audit them, and they get in a room with guys whose suits are more expensive than his salary. And they sit there and they'll say like, you're a pretty smart guy. How did you end up working here? God, like, whenever you're done with this, like, you know, if you want to come work for us, you should do that. Why would this guy want to like audit them for real? Why would he want to go after them? So he said, I would pay that guy $250,000 a year, and they'd have certain like perks and stuff like that, but he'd get $250,000 a year, and he'd sign a 12-year non-compete that he cannot go into like the finance field after he's done. But like, does he want to give up all that? He's probably got, you know, great health care. He's got benefit package with the government, getting $250,000 a year. I think that's worth the tax money. I think he would save in the long run because he would fucking actually audit JP Morgan Chase and get the money that we deserve out of them.
Absolutely. I mean, I think the actual audit, the real audit, would pay for his salary.
And that's what I mean. Well, they show that too. Not, you know, the IRS, every time they hire more IRS guys, they make up their money, you know, 3 to 1 or 4 to 1. It's just, that's a net gain for us. And I know like everybody shakes their head at that. Even I am like, fuck, I hate this shit. But like, I get it, right? It's like, it's good for society to have that.
Mm-hmm.
So
and then you can
pay these guys.
Build up trust within your government and within the companies that run this country. So it's, you know.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I know it's it sounds like, oh, you're paying more money now. But I think in the long run, you save money by doing it this way.
Absolutely. I like that idea.
So, I don't know. Maybe, be a good platform to run on. Hey, I want to get into office and pay myself a lot of money, a lot of taxpayer money. And, stuff like that. It's a hard platform to sell, but that's what I think they should do.
I wonder if he could audit Trump Tower.
I mean, I wouldn't want to touch it at this point with the streak he's on. Jesus Christ. Probably find out the government owes him fucking $4 billion.
Yeah, that's probably what it'd be like. Oh, well, there's an outstanding Secret Service bill that's just the amount that I have to spend on the campaign.
On the campaign, yeah.
Oh. Weird.
Oh, my God.
What's going to be the next thing?
Yeah. Well, we're going to see what's going to happen. Why don't we... What's your prediction for all this stuff? What do you think's going to happen in the next... not that, who the fuck knows tomorrow, but like...
All right, if we're gonna make our prediction, I think Biden's out. I think this COVID is the last straw for him. And especially with Adam Schiff coming out today. I saw that. I'm like, that's kind of one of your top ranking Democrats in the party. When he's coming out, Adam Schiff's a politician, a career politician, so he knows what he's doing when he's saying this. I'm sure he has the votes or the support behind him. Nancy Pelosi's been weirdly quiet about it, so I think she's ready to pull the trigger too. Biden hasn't been doing himself any favors. I think by this weekend we'll have a new Democrat nominee or presumptive nominee.
You think it's Kamala? I think so too. I think it's got to be Kamala. I think it's just the cleanest way to go.
Yeah, like you said. Yeah, you said that at the beginning. It is the cleanest way to go. I could see a little bit of infighting. I could see Gavin Newsom trying to put his foot in there.
I think, though, the problem with that, from what I read, was that it's never been done, right? We've had guys who haven't accepted the nomination, but we've never had somebody just give it up when they're the presumptive nominee right there. Like Lyndon Johnson didn't seek the nomination a long time before that. He knew he was done. The problem becomes, they said, all those delegates that are pledged to him and then all the money he's raised, he can give that to Kamala. But if you don't think there's going to be lawsuits and things that hold this up and make it more of a mess, if they try to tab Newsom or somebody,
and that would be why Kamala would be the cleanest way to go.
Right.
We'll see. I think Kamala will become the new Democratic presumptive nominee. It might be one of those where Jill Biden comes in and be like, honey, you can't.
It's enough. Yeah.
And that would be the switch where he'd be like, okay. Rather than party leadership.
I think this is, if they're going to do it, it's going to have to be at this time. Yeah. With the COVID and everything. Now I'm starting to think it's going to happen.
Yeah. It's a way to kind of bow out gracefully rather than be usurped. He can say, hey, I'm going to take care of my family. The party's in good hands. I've chosen the right people to be. I mean, he could go that whole spiel of how he set up the country for success and blah, blah, blah. This is his legacy as much as it will be hers.
Right.
He can gracefully take a step back.
Yeah, so I kind of agree with you. I mean, it still wouldn't shock me if he didn't step down, but I think we're going to get there. I think he's going to have to, and he's going to have to do it now if he's going to do it. It'd be amazing, though. If, can you imagine this moment in history this weekend if that shit happened? With all the shit that's happening right now?
Yeah, so I've got some other hypotheticals for you. A, does Kamala stand a chance against Trump?
She was polling better after the debate than Joe Biden was. She's had a lot of trouble inspiring. I'll put it that way. However, my son was bringing this up. He's like, I would rather see her. She's a prosecutor. I'd rather see her prosecute Trump all the way, all around the place. It's a little different now with the assassination attempt because he does have a little bit of that, I don't know, you want to call it a pity vote for a little while. Like he's
sympathy.
Yeah, he's got the sympathy. So I don't think you can attack until he attacks at this point. But I think she could sell herself as like, I'm a part of this. This is what we've done together. I get to carry on that legacy. I think she's got a better shot. I don't know. Here's my deal. I really worried about all this, but I was also really worried in Europe and the conservatives, because I just see this rise of fascism everywhere, like between Orban and all these guys. I think fascism's back. I think too many generations passed and nobody really understands it anymore. Like nobody even can define it. But fascism's back, people. I'm telling you right now. Get your Mussolini on, puff out that chest. It's fascism time. But, France and England were supposed to go more to the extreme, and they went back. And nobody saw that coming. And I think you might see that here. And I think abortion's going to still play a huge role, whether we're talking about it or not. And I think that might galvanize the youth a little more than we think. Although the youth with the Palestinian stuff is a little angry, but I still think that they know that that's the better choice. But I think they're going to give them hell up until that point. I think there's a good shot she will win, but obviously it wouldn't shock me if we have a Trump presidency.
Yeah, it wouldn't shock me either. So here's kind of how I see the advantages of Kamala, and so prosecutor kind of thing with Trump. But I think what could happen is a little Democratic secret weapon might come out of the wings, and that's Obama.
Yeah, he has been kind of under wraps.
And I think that's because it's Biden. So he's just like, hey, you do your thing, Joe. You got it. No wonder. But with a woman of color running for president, Michelle's going to be in his ears.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I didn't think of that. He has been under wraps. I think, yeah, you're right. I think he's trying to stay away so it doesn't look like he's controlling Biden. You know what I mean? Yeah, that's a good point. I still believe that. I still think there's a good shot that I do. It's just hard for the left because you kind of got to throw the popular vote out and get those states. Unfortunately, that's what it is. I mean, the left has a tougher time getting there because it's about the electoral college. I mean, there's a case to be made that at some point somebody could win by 7 million votes and still lose the goddamn election, and that's going to cause fucking chaos. So, but all right, man. Let's we should do this some more often. Like as it's going up, I've been wanting to do something revving up to the election. So
yeah, for sure, man.
we got other shit going on. So, all right. Well, I appreciate it. Why don't you plug your show?
My show is FDR's Wheelchair. We are a political comedy podcast. We release once weekly. You can find us on anywhere you get your podcast. You can email us with stuff that you want to talk about at FDR's Wheelchair Podcast at gmail.com. We are on the Twitter at FDR_WC_pod. And the reason we have that handle is because we get kicked off. But anyway, yeah, we're on there. We're pretty active and we're very responsive. So come check out our show and come interact with us.
Yeah, one of my favorites, actually. So I do appreciate you being on. You'll actually hear a lot more from us because we do have some things going on in the works. I guess we could talk about that, right? We could talk about that. So we're putting together a little thing that's just a little series between a bunch of different podcasts. That would be the story of your podcast, my podcast, and Mr. Beat, who doesn't have a podcast but has owns YouTube.
Yeah, apparently he's on YouTube or something.
Yeah, I think people might have heard of him. So we're going to do a little thing about Project 2025. It's not really anything that's Trump focused. It's actually just focused on what it's about and, what it could mean in the future if these things were put into place, because there's a lot of rhetoric out there about it. But I see a lot of things that are wrong as well. So we want to make sure that what gets out there is correct information.
Yeah, think of it as not as a political message rather than a teaching opportunity. We're trying to teach you what Project 2025 is and what it will do and the effects that it'll have.
So you'll be hearing a lot more. I don't know what we're calling it. We'll get there when we get there, but that's in the works. And like I said, yeah, man, the comeback, definitely. I kind of want to do some stuff rolling up to the election. So
yeah, man, I'm available whenever.
I want to thank you for taking some time out of your day today and listening to the show. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you want to learn more about the topics discussed in this episode, check out our show notes at my website, jburkshow.podbean.com. And don't forget to subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Good Pods, or wherever you enjoy your favorite podcast so you never miss out. You can also follow us at JBurk Show on Twitter and Instagram, and JBurk17 on TikTok for the latest updates and going-ons behind the scenes. If you enjoyed the show, please leave a review. It helps us improve and grow the show, and each and every one of you has such an impact on that, and I can't thank you enough. Join us next time, and remember,
it won't always be a straight line, but take the journey and escape a while for thoughtful excursions into the world of ideas across media, politics, technology, pop culture, and all realms of civic life.
You're listening to the With Jay Burke Show.